Hello and welcome. Today I've got Corey Morningstar with me, and I'm absolutely thrilled, Corey, to have you here with me today and to introduce you and your work to our audience. I will just read a little bit about Corey. Corey Morningstar is an independent investigative journalist, a writer and an environmental activist, focusing on global ecological collapse and political analysis of the non-profit industrial complex. She lives in Canada, and her writings can be found on the critical thinking platform that she founded, Wrong Kind of Green. Hello, Corey.
It's a pleasure to be here, to be on your show.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So maybe to start with, because it's such a huge subject and to get one's head around if one's new to this information, maybe just to start with, to give the listeners a bit of context about your work before you began to be an investigative journalist as an activist, an environmentalist.
And I've been writing, was a community activist, on the ground activist, and probably I became the most prominent activist, I guess, in my city and in my communities, working with everyone. We had lots of different campaigns. We passed the first ban against bottled water in Canada. Myself and the group of people and that I worked with, anarchists, just all kinds of very liberal people, professors, broad swath of people. We did a great big campaign to try to phase out drive-thrus back when climate change was becoming an issue. And that turned into like a huge thing right across Canada. And it turned out the restaurant industry hired a team of lawyers flying all over Canada trying to stop our movement from being taken up in other cities. So yeah, climate change. And then I was in, again, for COP15, 2009. My activism led up to that point. And then at that point, just what I experienced working with other groups over during that conference led me to start writing about it and taking a step back from what I was doing and trying to figure out why we didn't win at everything and why everything was always watered down and why I was getting censored in public platforms and that. So that caused me to take a step back and really start analyzing the movements themselves. Yeah.
Can you say the name of the conference again, because I missed that?
The United Nations Conference of the Parties, 2009, COP15 in Copenhagen. So that's I went to that and I came back. And actually, when I came back there was police on my doorstep asking me questions about a protest we're having the next day or a couple of days after that. And yeah, around that time, that's when I stepped back and started writing about what I was seeing as a person involved with all the groups. I mean, involved with, you know, just all of them, all the big ones that you know of, 350 at that time. A big one that came out was Tick, Tick, Tick. That's one that really undermined the developing nations at the conference, in Bolivia in particular. Well, developing nations and those vulnerable islands, they were demanding that the world not exceed 1 degree temperature rise. And then the NGOs, the big ones, the international ones like Greenpeace, they created this, and it took me a long time to find this out. They created a campaign called Tick, Tick, Tick with Avaaz Advertising in the UK, one of the biggest advertising agencies in the world. And they created this campaign that it was a corporate campaign to basically exploit the message and allow corporations to utilize that message to gain support from the public. That was sort of the beginning of the corporations and the NGOs really coming together. And then that was in 2009, and now at 2020, it's really become after like a decade of social engineering, it's really become, there's a word, if you once you know it, you start seeing it everywhere, together. So now openly corporations and the ruling class and activists, NGOs, is becoming normal for us all to be seen together. Like that's a key message behind everything, together. And the thing is, we're not together. Like what it's done is erased all class analysis. And then just jumping back again to that conference, well, Avaaz and tick, tick, tick demanded 2 degrees. That was a full 1 degree over the 1 degree that the developing nations and islands were demanding. So they completely undermined the very most vulnerable nations in the world. And so it's ironic that 10 years later, when we had the right temperature at the time, and now we've fully exceeded that, and we've allowed everything to keep getting worse and worse, and now all of a sudden they say planetary emergency, climate emergency, when they're the very ones that undermined it 10 years ago at the most important conference that we had. And so if you go back further before that, I have the papers published online in 1999. There's papers on Greenpeace acknowledging that we can't go further than 1 degree, that the planet as a whole can't be allowed to, the temperature to increase globally 1 degree. And then there's another paper, Friends of the Earth, acknowledged that same paper based on a science paper going back to the UN in 1988. So basically everything's been allowed to accelerate for economic growth. And now, right now with the whole virus, what we're going through right now with the lockdown of the earth, now it's a reset into the 4th industrial revolution. So now this is a pause. It's like a controlled demolition, and then they're relaunching it into the 4th industrial revolution. So that it's all intertwined, like the environment movement, the corporations. World Economic Forum is probably the biggest behind everything, and that encompasses all the corporations, all global finance, ruling class. What's happened, we have no resistance to what's happening. We're being swallowed up. Extinction Rebellion, the Greta Thunberg movement, that really came in and mobilized everyone. It's like, how Facebook and Twitter are platforms, and they make billions of dollars, and their success is dependent on the labor, the people putting in the data. It's like those movements are built on the backs of people like you and I who want a better world. Mm-hmm. And, people just assume that those people have their interests at heart, but they're actually working for the interests that are opposite to our interests, if that makes sense. So we're like the free labor. We're like what empowers them to have a voice. I mean, if you took away all that support of the citizenry, they're nothing without that support. That support is what gives them power at international conferences. That's why they're allowed to go in, why they're invited everywhere. They have that support of the populace behind them. And then without that, they're nothing. So we're feeding that. But what we don't understand is we're feeding the very machine that's destroying nature, and that's destroying our shared futures.
Yeah. So, because this is new information for any of our listeners, this is huge, absolutely huge, and so I just want to kind of take it apart a bit. Maybe you can name some of the NGOs and help our listeners understand why we can't trust these.
Well, it's a matrix. I mean, Greta Thunberg seemed like she came out of the blue. And I remember at the time, a journalist contacted me at the time. He said, "Have you seen this girl, Greta Thunberg?" And even though I'd never even, how things just seep in, when you're hit by things left, right, and center, and you don't really know why, that's something that's happening. And when media, all owned obviously by the very corporations that control everything, when you start getting hit like that, and things start seeping into your psyche from every which way, something's happening. And celebrity is something they really, really use, especially in a society where celebrity is like a pathology, a fetish. And so instantly you could see, so I had to go, I said, I think I know who you mean. So I had to go and see who that was. And instantly I could just feel it a mile away that this was something we were about to get hit with, because they were putting her everywhere. She was being sort of shoved down our throats. And as soon as that happened, and this is way before most people would have even heard of her, I went and looked at her social media, created June 13th, right? Now we're in December. She's already becoming like an international star. And then the thing that really struck me, the Twitter account, I always go right to the bottom and see who was added first. And the whole Twitter account, I mean, we're talking about a 15-year-old girl. These are all the very, very key people behind like the corporate environmental movement that it took me, 10 years to know all these names, who they were. Like I know them because I've worked in that for so long. And here's a 15-year-old girl, and her whole Twitter account of follows is like a Rolodex of the who's who of the whole climate movement. So right there, and there's no kids or anything. It's just all climate people and politicians, all the people working on the financialization of nature. So right away I knew, and it was created, like I said, June, nothing up until that point. So it took I started following that. I started writing about that. It became really, really interesting because all the work I'd built up to that I had done up to that point, sometimes even though I documented so much work over 10 years, it felt like maybe that was a waste of time. But what happened with Greta, all the work I'd done for all that time built into what was happening that year. It all came together. Like I didn't know that all I had been working on would all build to this big momentum and push that we're still seeing now. It's hard to explain because it's so interwoven and detailed. But for instance, the people behind Greta, even it took me, I don't even think I have 2 volumes of work on Greta Thunberg, the people behind Greta Thunberg. There's not a lot about her as a person. I mean, I don't know her. All I know is the people behind her and how she's constructed. And so in volume 2, it gets into actually, because it took me that long to find exactly who was behind her, aside from the people that I outline in volume 1. But a key person, so there's a tweet by Ingmar Rentzhog on the very first day that Greta goes viral. And on the very first tweet, the third person to respond to that is a person named Callum Grieve. Well, he's very, very important. He serves World Economic Forum. He created the climate group New York event that's every year since I think 2007, 2008. He created storytelling agency, marketing agency, specializing in behavioral change, storytelling. He works for the climate group. He works for Christina Figueres, who's the former UN secretary, who is interwoven with We Mean Business. Anyway, here's basically We Mean Business represents 6 huge smaller corporations, not corporations, like collectives. The Prince of Wales Group, which is now called the Corporate Leaders Group of Europe, Climate Group, there's 6 of them. And so even We Mean Business represents about $25 trillion. And they represent the biggest corporations on the planet. So this is who's behind Greta. And then on that same thread, you've got people like heads of finance. I mean, one tweet goes across the world, and then you have these very, very key people at the top of the hierarchy of corporate interests, all right there on this tweet. I mean, it's ridiculous. And then tagged as Greenpeace, United Nations, I think the climate strike group, there's like 6, what's the one? The climate strike group in the United States. I mean, there's your key people right there that carried.
They all commented on that first post.
We're all tagged in that first post, right? And so anyway, that was like really a lucky find. It took quite a while for me to even find that.
Yeah.
And it really brought everything together. And so right away, like there's articles, you can go back. I found at least 3 where he's met Greta at different points in her tour, Callum Grieve. You almost need, like I lay it all out so it's readable in the articles. It takes a long time to get through it, but it's like you'll gain so much knowledge of how this works and how everybody's interwoven. But yeah, we mean business, World Economic Forum. The World Economic Forum partnered with the United Nations last year officially on June 13th. So when you hear United Nations, that's basically World Economic Forum. It's a global consolidation of power that we're witnessing right now.
Yeah.
And then even with the WHO, the World Economic Forum partnered with the WHO this year on March 11th, the date that they declared a pandemic, for the COVID Business Task Force. And at the time of launch, it was over 200 corporations. Now it's over 700.
Wow.
So yeah, and so what's being used to push all this through is the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And that's what they're pushing through for all their said solutions. They're all market solutions. So there's nothing, if it doesn't make money, it's not in the equation. Everything has to create new emerging markets, everything. And now going forward, it gets actually a little more confusing. In my series, I wrote last January that the Green New Deal is a Trojan horse for the 4th Industrial Revolution, which it is. Like if you look at the EU Green New Deal, it's all about digitalization, increased militarism, right? Fourth Industrial Revolution. She's right on stage with Klaus Schwab, the founder of World Economic Forum. So it's not about, none of this is about environment. None of this is about protection of biodiversity. This is all a transition to a whole new global economic system. And not just that, it's a transition to a whole industrial way of living where we're merging with technology. So it's the opposite of being like, all of this, so much of this is because we've lost our connection with nature, right? We continue to lose our very, very important critical connection to nature. And going forward, there's basically no nature at all. It's you and digital and technology, and that's it, right? And it's all tied into blockchain. And so what happens, all your behavior is linked through the blockchain to your benefits. And so the blockchain, there's no human oversight. It's all contracts tied into the blockchain, which, by the way, China just launched their blockchain on April 25th, which is a huge security threat to the US dollar. So even nature itself will be monetized and tied into the blockchain.
For those out there that this is new information, I just want to acknowledge that this is huge. And, the cognitive dissonance, the betrayal, when we feel that we are, certainly, number of years back when I was subscribing to all these NGOs, and I've never been wealthy, but giving money to all number of charities, Greenpeace, the Green Party, so many, Avaaz, 350, signing so many petitions every day, and feeling like I was, feeling good about what I was doing. And being part of making a difference, and so it's a really big shift, and for a number of years now since I've been aware of that, and I've pulled back from that, but this holding, and personally been holding the energy around what's happening with fifth generation technology. It's a very, very, it's not a biological energy. It's a very unattractive energy. So the NGOs have created this very kind of feel nice kind of green part of the environmental movement, whereas holding this 5G piece, it doesn't feel very nice, and it doesn't feel very attractive, and nobody is very attracted to it, you know, and they don't really want to hear about it. So I just really hope that our listeners can stay with us and just feel. It will bring up very strong feelings if this is new information. Corey has written an incredibly thorough, I think it's 6 articles, 6 volumes that you've written on
the second one so far is another 7.
Yeah.
So
okay.
I'm not done the second volume.
Right.
No, there's only about 3 left, but I have to, I think, step away now to explain how this ties into the. I mean, I touched upon the 4th Industrial Revolution in the first volume, but I honestly didn't think it would be rolling out already. I thought we had some time. I thought we had still a few years to really learn about what that was and how to, you know, resist it. But it's right here. It's already here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so without taking away all hope, and like you said, the NGOs actually pull on everything before they put it out. That's the whole key to make people feel good. That's a key part of why they're successful and why they do garner a huge following. People want to feel good, and people want to feel like they're making a difference. And so they really exploit and manipulate that, well, that good, you know, the good intentions of people, you know, to further their brand, to further their power. Yeah, anyway, the one good thing I do want to say is that there is a silver lining in the whole 5G thing that has to be implemented at a municipal level. And that is a level of government that we do have more power, you know, to exert our will. And so right now, I'm just saying it's possible to defeat that if people, not with NGOs, if people in their communities organize and fight that at a municipal level, it's possible to get that stopped in municipalities. That being said, they're already shooting like hundreds and thousands of satellites up into the atmosphere. But it is possible if we organize. I think that 5G, there's a chance to defeat it. And especially because you have so many scientists and doctors who are saying this is dangerous. Stop. We have to stop, you know, demanding a moratorium.
And there isn't much out there about this, but basically moratorium, I think it's use of controlled opposition as well, because the word moratorium means, in the Black's Laws Dictionary, it means a delay to an obligation.
Now that word is just basically, it's a word academics and scientists always use for everything, so they're not perceived as too radical.
Okay, yeah. So we just need to be aware of it and not get too overly excited about a moratorium.
That would be better than nothing in order to stop it. I mean, I guess
what we had here where I live in Totnes in Devon in the United Kingdom is the council, you know, people were asking for a moratorium, local activists, and the council declared a moratorium, the Totnes Council. But in the
on 5G?
Yeah, but in the paper, when it's published, I read the article, they're basically saying we're declaring a moratorium, but we don't think it has any power. Basically, so they're saying in the same breath, we don't think it has any power. And then I experienced other activists getting excited and saying we've got a ban, and it's like, we haven't got a ban.
Yeah, that happens with fracking. Actually happens exactly with fracking. So they'll do a moratorium, and then they'll have a big NGO try to make it like a victory for them, and they'll say, oh, we have a ban, we want a ban. And then the grassroots are like, no, it's not a ban, that's a moratorium, right? Yeah. But they like to make it that, like, they like to use that to make it like they have this great big victory. Yeah. So I didn't know that about the 5G that you had a moratorium. I don't get it though. Like, how come they say it has no power? Like, who comes?
They don't believe they have any power against the industry, but of course they do have power. I mean, it's a cop-out, isn't it? We all have.
Yeah, I mean, if the city says no, industry can't come in and install it, I mean, it will still be everywhere, right, in the world. But if your municipality says no, industry can't come in and put up the infrastructure. So I don't get why they're saying they can't resist the industry. And so on one hand, you have the marketing saying, listen to the science to propel forward their desired fourth revolution under the guise of climate change. Mm-hmm. And then on the other hand, you have scientists saying 5G is dangerous, it's a risk to health and biodiversity, and you have that being pushed away. So it's like they use the science and tell you to listen to the science when it advances their ideologies and desires. A desire that will destroy humanity and biodiversity. And then when you have science that doesn't support what they want to push forward, then it's put back into the shadows and ignored.
Yeah, and undermined.
Yeah, so I just want to say there is some hope.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think take back our movements. That right now it's like there's just nothing left. It's all been absorbed up into, by Extinction Rebellion, Greta Thunberg. It all is absolutely interwoven and linked in with corporate power, controlled by corporate power, funded by corporate power. They serve their interests. They don't serve our interests. Yeah, but we have to understand what we're up against, and we have to understand, especially the class analysis. Like, if you go back to the movements that came out of the 60s, that's class analysis. Like, it's the first thing you have to do behind everything, class analysis. And so that's been eradicated. That's gone, and we really have to bring that back. Like, even with the environmental movement, if you notice in the Greta Thunberg movement, there's nothing about militarism there. Like, militarism is one of the biggest contributors to climate change and environmental degradation to death, right? It's horrific. It's not even in the equation. We can't solve climate change. We can't solve ecological crises of any kind without dealing with the military-industrial complex. Capitalism, imperialism, that has to be the founding bedrock of any movement worth anything. Without those, it's worthless. The movement is worthless. They have to be founded on that bedrock. It's all interconnected, interwoven. So we really have to take back control of our movements and recognize who we should be aligned with. We should be aligned with each other, with our brothers and sisters, not with Bill Gates, not with Klaus Schwab, not with people that protect their interests at the expense of ours.
So can I just ask you a bit, because Avaaz, I know, is one of the NGOs, and obviously has a huge following.
Yeah.
And, can you help our listeners just to understand what Avaaz, some of what they're responsible for? Why can we not trust Avaaz?
Avaaz, if you look at who the founders of Avaaz, they're all completely embedded into the United Nations, into like the British and US governments. That's where they come from. They don't come from the McKinsey Institute. These aren't grassroots activists that have risen up. These are all Harvard graduates that are all part of the elite establishment from the get-go. And Avaaz has been major since it began back in 2007 at destabilizing countries in service to empire. So over and over again, you saw them involved in Libya, where we annihilated one of the best, the finest countries in Africa, who had done so much in Africa, the leader, Gaddafi. And so you know, and even that, it's all, anyone who's a threat to the states is made into a demon, right? They're demonized. Avaaz and all the NGOs come in and they create, it's like the behavioral economics of hatred. They create demonization campaigns. They build on hate. They sell hate. And they create that hatred to create an acquiescence to go in and bomb countries. You get citizens actually supporting and applauding, going to destroy a whole nation of people, our brothers, our sisters, babies, children. It's incredible how powerful this is, and that's why it's so dangerous. They tried to overthrow the Bolivian government back years ago during a Tipnis dispute. Syria, the same thing. I mean, Syria has done an amazing job, the Syrian army, of fighting the biggest empire on the planet and liberating their country from terrorist forces. So again, Avaaz didn't succeed in the no-fly zone in Syria this time, but I mean, they tried their hardest. And so at the same time that they're doing that, building hatred and trying to destabilize countries that the US is targeted on, you know, at the same time they're talking about saving elephants and whatever, butterflies, like things that everyone wants to save, you know, beautiful things. Yeah. And so it creates confusion.
Yeah. Well, I saw an interesting campaign from them not so long ago, which was about asking for money, you know, which in the past I would have been giving them money for. So it was just very interesting to see. And it was about censoring misinformation.
Oh, yeah.
And it was really interesting to see it and go, oh,
funny.
My God, I know what that misinformation is. That's the truth, you know, that's
right.
The voice of the, you know, the grassroots activists and people that are really fighting for justice are being censored, and people that really care are paying for that, are giving their consent for that level of censoring to happen.
Yeah, I mean, without social license, a lot of the things that are going ahead and that we see happening cannot happen. And the corporations, World Economic Forum, we mean business, that you must have the people on your side. You must have that social license. Otherwise, there will be revolt and resistance. And so, I mean, that's the key thing. And that's where the NGOs really, really are at the forefront, obtaining that acquiescence, creating that social license necessary, lay out things that harm us and that destroy our shared environment, that destroy our planet, you know, that kill people around the planet. So it's very, very serious. Like I wouldn't waste my time writing about it if I didn't think it was so serious, but I see it as the biggest barrier to creating a better world. Yeah, and, you know, a lot of people, I see people that have really caring people, they don't have a lot of money, and they'll send that last $5 or $10 to Avaaz or to Greenpeace, whatever. I mean, Ken Patel, the founder of Avaaz, draws $200,000 of Avaaz every year. These people, same with all of them, and that's not even that much. If you go to Conservation International, the Nature Conservancy, they're drawing out in excess of $600,000 a year for salaries, and that's not including travel money, board money on different boards. That's not including speaking engagements, events. So these people are making huge amounts of money. It's not activism, it's industry, right? Like I don't make money off my writing and my activism. Activism is something we do because we're citizens, because we should care about our communities and care about each other. And we're all responsible to protect our children and to protect what sustains us and to create a better world. And for that, you should not expect massive amounts of money. So activism, I mean, since when does everyone have like these huge, massive salaries and everything being an activist? It's a joke, you know? And it's sad to me to see people sending money that they can't even afford to these multi-million-dollar GOs that are absolutely in bed with corporate power.
Yeah.
It's sad.
Absolutely. I mean, it's devastating and incredibly effective. And
it's, sorry, I just wanted to say there's grassroots groups that could really use a few bucks, right? For food, for supplies, like people that do like really radical work defending the land. Like right now, the movements are actually, it's like a massive free lobby group for renewable energy. Renewable, clean energy, not so clean, not so renewable. Everything's geared towards maintaining this lifestyle that we have in the West at the expense of those in the South. And so wrong. And yeah, anyway, I just wanted to say it's like activism has become a lobby group for industry. If you go to one of the key Greenpeace people, his whole Twitter feed is promotion of, so-called clean energy and for industry. Like, this is not about defending land. This is not about protecting nature.
This is a really important piece for our listeners as well, is the renewable energy, because the reality that the renewable energy is not the answer and is not as clean as we've been led to believe. Is another huge betrayal and a kind of big piece for people to stomach. So can you just unpick that a little bit?
Well, there's a lot of discussion right now about the movie that Jeff Gibbs just put out, Planet of the Humans, and that Jeff does an amazing job at really slaying what green energy is. He really does an amazing job at exposing what green energy is and exposing actually the faux environmental movement. That being said, Michael Moore comes out right after and tries to drag everybody back into the very same channels that's supporting that, like the Extinction Rebellion, Greta Thunberg, the Democrats. What's that?
I haven't seen that. He comes
out.
Wow.
Well, it's on a question and answer that follows. So in interviews, like not within the film, after the film, he's using his platform just to drag everybody back into the same system that the film basically exposes. But aside from that, still in those respects, a really good film. The only problem I have with it is basically it paints all humans as the problem instead of the system itself. Yeah. Again, capitalism, imperialism, patriarchy, racism. So again, without those things as our bedrock foundation, worthless. But it's a great movie to see what so-called green energy actually is.
Yeah, I felt a huge relief watching it, just having it named.
Yeah.
And then, obviously seeing different people's responses to it, it's a minefield, and it's so tricky because, people don't know what to believe, and it's huge. So I hope that some listeners will go along and read some of your really amazing, thorough research to help connect the dots for themselves, because there's so many things that it raises questions around, and like, can't possibly, the renewable energy, the NGOs, and then it'd be good to hear more about the fourth industrial revolution, but like what that is.
Well, another thing too, like right now, even Population Matters, which is like a really, in my opinion, racist, vile NGO. They're always talking about population, but only as it pertains in the global South, when really, and what's not in the movie is the class analysis on the population. Like, it just basically paints all humans are horrible, we're all disgusting, dirty, and destroy the earth. But they leave out the fact that that indigenous peoples representing 5% of the planet actually care for and protect 80% of the planet's biodiversity. So you can't just say that as a blanket statement. So when we republished the film on Wrong Kind of Green, we added a caveat to it to talk about the population and how it has to be looked at and constructed. And, for example, 1% of the world creates 50% of the emissions. And that's what these NGOs and everybody else never talks about, because it's their world that they want to protect, their lifestyle that they want to protect at the expense of the global south and at the expense of the planet. And I just wanted to add to Avaaz, all the NGOs, you'll be hard pressed to find anybody that goes against the New Deal for Nature, which is the monetization of nature, financialization of nature. Avaaz promotes it, Greenpeace promotes it, they're all on board with it. They're all promoting it with campaigns that actually never really mention the word, never really say what it is. You really have to start becoming media literate and learn how to keywords and how things are framed, language. So yeah, Greta, XR, they never mention the New Deal for Nature. They never speak out against it. It's supported by the United Nations, all the UN affiliated, the Convention of Biological Diversity, UN is behind it. WWF, one of the most notorious, worst NGOs in the world, responsible for deaths of Indigenous people, torture, rape, they're behind it. These are the people, okay? These are the organizations in the movement responsible for killing and death and rape and torture.
And I'd like to point our listeners to your campaign site, No Deal for Nature, because you've got some fantastic resources on the site there, a number of documentaries. I think there's about 4, which a couple about WWF that share what's been happening on the ground, WWF and Indigenous cultures, and also around the financialization of nature.
Yeah,
so it's really helpful to connect the dots for me to watch those.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of information, but it's all fascinating, and you'll feel really empowered, like learning about all this. So WWF and the World Economic Forum are 2 at the forefront of the financialization of nature. And like I've already said, you can go to the World Economic Forum website, and it's all there. I mean, none of this stuff is hidden. It's all there. And in my writing, I base all my writing on their papers, their documents, their statements, right? Otherwise, it's too unbelievable for people. They wouldn't even believe it. So it's all there. Even the 4th Industrial Revolution website is online. People can look at it. It's very dystopian, very terrifying. Again, destroying the remnants left of our already deteriorating social fabric, our already deteriorating relationship with the natural world. Yeah, and so, for instance, Greta Thunberg, Jane Goodall, and David Attenborough are the #1 influencers for the World Economic Forum. And there's actually a video of them marketing the Voice for the Planet, which is the sister campaign for New Deal for Nature. So, I mean, everyone's like up to here, you know, in their interwoven relationships and partnerships with the ruling class and corporate power. It's just, we have to start again, going back to our communities, creating real movements, real resistance based on defending the land, based on protecting the water, based on alliances with our sisters and brothers of the global south. It's not just about us. It's not just about maintaining our lifestyles that actually don't even nurture us or keep us happy. This lifestyle that you know, what's become, where it's so material. I mean, people in Canada, children, United States, in the first world countries, I mean, how many people are medicated now? How many people are just so, this isn't making us happy. But the way forward has to be, I mean, we have to reconnect with the natural world, not monetize it and put a price tag on it and trade it and objectify it. We had to go back and you know, really work on those relationships. We have to reconnect with nature, not monetize it and go into a world where we merge with technology. I mean, it's just the wrong way to go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think most people would agree if they were being asked about whether this is what they wanted to be happening. So the rollout of the technology is happening without us being asked, and it's happening very steadily. So although you have got, you've got techie people who are kind of excited about it and think it all sounds amazing, I think the majority of people, if you ask them, would you like antennas every 100 feet, do you want your kettle to be synced with the internet, they go, no thanks.
I mean, it's all Internet of Things, everything connected to the internet, every aspect of your life and existence. I mean, even in the very near future where your thoughts do not belong to you, right? Even your thoughts don't belong to you anymore. World Economic Forum has a story on the year to 2030, and so there's a woman who's written a story talking about her life, and then near the bottom she says she has no privacy, she has no thoughts that belong to her own, and even her dreams are no longer hers alone. And then she just adds, but it's great, and she just hopes that no one will use it against her. It's a complete surveillance, not even state, it's a global surveillance system that's even being rolled out right now under the guise of COVID-19.
Yeah.
At the same time, on March 26th, they launched the Global Education Network for Digital Learning. Right now, all this, kids across the whole globe are out of school, even though they're impervious to COVID-19 anyway. They really don't get it. They don't get sick from it, anything. They're all out of school. It's a transition to digitalization, which is a huge part of Fourth Industrial Revolution happening right now. In New York, some families who don't have laptops or whatever, if you're not online being engaged in there, children's services will come to your house. You can have your children taken. This is happening now.
Really?
Yeah. So now we have Microsoft, we have like the world's biggest sociopaths in charge of shaping and molding our children even more so than they're already being molded by, entertainment, media, technology. It's like a whole new level. In the World Economic Fourth Industrial Revolution education booklet that just came out in January, they say right in it that the human teacher is obsolete now going forward. That doesn't fit into the 21st century Fourth Industrial Revolution education. So
this is on the World Economic Forum. And can you remind us what it's called? It's connected to education.
Fourth Industrial Revolution education. It should come right up. You'll find it. And so this is already happening. It launched this digital network with 90 partners and corporations involved. This takes a long time to create this. It doesn't just happen overnight. Facebook's involved, Microsoft, I don't know, they're all on the site. You can go to that website, they're all there. It's already rolling out. Public tax dollars are being paid to buy children laptops and everything if they don't have them. And all of our kids more so. It's bad enough that, what technology has done to the social fabric of our society and to children, but now it's going like even more so. I can't really imagine the amount of depression and suicide and just general unhappiness that's going to come out of this. And there's a conditioning happening right now, like the distancing from the human and the further bonding to technology.
Yeah,
this is
really
right. And so this is happening. No one's even aware of it. It's a global thing. It's in progress. Who's going to advocate for our children? Who's advocating for them? Like, from what I've seen so far, the unions and everything are all on board with this. There's no one protecting our children from this dystopian world where your life is screen, digital technology. That's your entire existence. even where it starts to merge with your own physical self. Where are their advocates? Why are we not, as mothers and parents, advocating for our children? Why are we not fighting this patriarchy that's going to sacrifice our children to the altar of fourth industrial revolution? It really bothers me.
Yeah,
like,
it really bothers me as a mother as well, and it's very, very difficult. I've got a teenager, you know, and it's
yeah,
very difficult because it's been very cleverly kind of wheedled in to everything, you know, their peer groups, their learning.
okay. Yeah, I mean, it's hard because it's addictive. The technology is addictive. The screen's addictive. That's the scientific fact.
Yeah.
And that's why Silicon Valley executives do not let their own children near it. You know, and there's lots of articles on that you can read. Their nannies are not allowed to let the children near that technology. And if they're caught, those nannies are fired and they're replaced. Like, if it's so great for our children, why are their children not allowed near it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and they don't have the literacy skills to use it wisely because they're kids, and it takes a long time. You know, a lot of people never even acquire or obtain those skills. So yeah, it's just setting them up for failure and for miserable lives. And it's heartbreaking. It is. It's heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we have to recognize who the NGOs represent, who they work for, how they undermine our grassroots movements, how they undermine and even mold and shape our thinking. There's a lot of social engineering and conditioning happening right now. A lot of it, lots of it. Like, even when the Greta book came out, I never had attacks that anything in the research wasn't correct. It was just anger, you know, and that might be something that you understand even better than me. Just people were mad. They did not want to know. They did not want their idea of someone coming to save them blemished. They wanted to believe, right? And it was more of that than anything else. They wanted to believe, and how dare I try to, you know, mess up that story.
Yeah, well, I think it's very cleverly designed. You know, what I've witnessed from the outside, Extinction Rebellion has given an incredible sense of community and togetherness, and was designed so that everyone could pour their creativity and their gifts into it and be received in their gifts. So it's really fulfilled that sense of community and purpose, a sense of you know, fighting for nature and
right,
standing for nature together and community. So yeah, and from the outside, you know, knocking on the door saying, yeah, but what about this? You know, what about this? This is a bit of an alarm over here. And what about this? This is a bit of an alarm. And, you know, 5G being part of that. My experience was that no one could go near it. And there was definitely a very clever censoring within the organization,
right.
even though they were saying, of course they're against 5G, but they were actually not allowing anyone to talk about it. And that, so I know people that were in Extinction Rebellion, but when they started talking about 5G, they realized they weren't welcome. They couldn't still be in there. So it's very complex, you know, and it's a big thing to lose that sense of belonging. If you feel a sense of belonging,
yeah,
and to speak up, and then realize that you actually lose that community, that's a big deal.
You only belong if you go along.
Yeah,
I mean, they're really, really good at that, isolating dissenting voices, right? And conformity continues to be such a powerful tool used against us. If people ever look at the Ash experiment online, it just goes to, have you ever seen that, the Ash experiment? Okay, so it's really short. It's just a few minutes. You can find one online, and it's took place, actually I'm not sure, I think the 70s, it could have been the 50s, maybe the 50s. And so there's a room, and there's one person, there's 3 actors, and then in this particular video, there's different experiments. There's 3 actors, and then there's one person. And so they hold up really simple math equations, like 4 + 1 = 5. And so they'll ask him, and he says the right number, and then the other 3 people, the actors, will say the wrong number. And then he's like, what? No, it's 5. And then they'll hold up a new card. And like almost instantly, as soon as the other people say the number, which he knows in his head is wrong, but one after another, they say, for instance, 2 + 1 = 3, they'll say 4. And so they say 4, 4, 4, and then they get to him. And even though he knows the number is 3, he says 4, right? And so it's that power to conform, to be accepted by your peers. You know, it's a powerful weapon, and over they use that against us. And so that's something really, really to be aware of. Yeah, and I mean, they're masters at turning us against our own best interests and turning us against each other. I mean, they have all the money in the world. They hire the best psychologists. They have the best advertisers, the best marketers. They create beautiful, holistic sounding, feeling advertisements, videos. I mean, they really have so much at their disposal that we don't have. So you really have to do the work and educate yourself on and come to the understanding that that's all part of one system. And then there's us. And they're not going to work. They work for them, and we're on our own. So stop expecting what's happened. People stop doing things in communities and stop their own resistance because we thought Greenpeace would solve it. Or we thought Greenpeace would work on that. Yeah. Sierra Club would fix this. And then it allowed us to not worry about it, right? You can just pay your money each month or whatever. They're taking care of that. And so we've really let that happen. I mean, it's not really, people didn't know. People thought those groups were advocating on our behalf. They didn't really know that they're all one and the same.
Yeah. And that level of controlled opposition, I witness it in everything now. So any movement that grows any level of momentum will have a controlled sort of slipstream, which is the direction that is sort of taking us off, so that we won't be as effective as we would if we just really just kind of listen to, okay, what is the action that I need to take here? And
yeah, if they weren't able to control it and use it to their advantage, we wouldn't hear about it. I mean, there's a reason you hear about certain things, right? Like if I go down, for instance, when I won, which was stupid and didn't make any difference at all, but at the time it felt like a big deal. And it took a long time for me to figure out, if you're if you don't have that cost analysis, if you don't have that, that integration, that if you don't recognize environmentalism as part of capitalism, imperialism, all that, like the bottled water ban that we achieved. And it was like, oh wow, the first city in Canada, we achieved a bottled water ban. Didn't matter at all. All they did was switch the water to flavored water, blah, blah, blah. It didn't make any difference. And it took, probably a year to make that happen, maybe 2 or 3 years. I can't even remember. But no one heard about that. I mean, it was in the paper. I'm sure it was in a couple spots. But they're not going to promote in the media that they own and control and use against us. They're not going to promote campaigns or movements that have, massive winning. They're not going to promote those. They don't want to give people ideas. You know, like there's a lot of radical movements in the global south that succeed in keeping, you know, mining off their lands. They use radical tactics, all kinds of stuff, sabotage, sometimes kidnapping. They do what they have to do to defend their land, defend their water, defend their people. We don't hear about those. They, you know, they want you just to stick with Avaaz. Stick, you know, stick with 350 people they tell you to stick with.
So do you want to tell us more about your campaign, No Deal for Nature?
Well, basically the No Deal for Nature. So in October, they want to pass it's called New Deal for Nature. It's a deal for capitalists, a deal for Wall Street. They want to monetize nature, global in scale. So everything will be, basically they say what you can't measure, you can't manage. So everything will be monetized, traded. You know, their own scientists say things like those with money will own nature. John Elkington Bolands, who was one of the original, when they launched the XR business. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So XR business launched with the co-founder Gail Bradbrook, is that her name?
Yeah.
She was one of the signatories of that campaign with John Elkington, I believe his name is, from Bolands. You know, he says, who will be the Bill Gates of ecosystem services? You know, what's that telling you? Who will be the Bill Gates of ecosystem services? Who will own the skies? Who will, you know, who is the commodification of nature, the monetization, to be traded, bought, sold, enslavement of nature. And everyone's on board. Avaaz, like I said, Avaaz is behind it. Greenpeace is Avaaz behind it. World Wildlife Fund, they're all part and parcel. Friends of the Earth, you can't find it. Club of Rome, right? Club of Rome is a big one, which was one of the initial people they work with. We Don't Have Time, who was the person that put Greta out on social media, the very first tweet, and our rents hog. So, you know, you can see everything's interwoven, all the groups all interwoven together. This person's here. Anyway, back to the New Deal for Nature, probably the very, very best person to read a lot of what's behind it is Clive Spash. He's an ecologist, economist, and he's been brilliant on it. Probably one of the only people that haven't, you know, sold out going along. Yeah, so it's all these things coming forward. Digitalization of healthcare, and telehealth, mHealth, digitalization of healthcare, automation of jobs. We just saw job loss is huge. Half the people in the world will lose their jobs. Here, people don't care very much because right now everyone has, you know, they're getting some money to get them by for a few months, but at the same time, in the global south, like in South Asia, India, those people face starvation, right? Over like a virus that even the WHO says most people get it without getting sick. It's affected even in Canada. Almost 80% of the deaths that we've had with it, not perhaps not from it, but with it, have been people in healthcare homes, right? Elderly healthcare centers, nursing homes. Again, this all ties in with it, so it's really, really layered. But COVID-19 is a conduit. To everything happening now. It's allowing all this stuff to accelerate and go forward under guise of COVID-19.
Yeah.
And that's the same with the New Deal for Nature. Everything that you'll see now, there's a new thing. It's just started again, basically the COVID recovery for cities. So C40 cities, which is behind all of this as well, that's Bloomberg, Clinton. They have all, I guess it circles back to where we started, 5G. Smart cities can't advance without 5G. So right now there's, you'll see in The Guardian, you're gonna start seeing a lot of articles about green cities. How do we come out of this and have beautiful green cities? Knowing that people are disgusting and don't fit in with anything, we need to keep it like this. And that's all about, and they'll sound good. Like the articles will just say, oh, you know, they're going to create this bike lane. They're going to take this road that's empty because there's no people out, and we'll create a bike lane. And that sounds great. And we need bike lanes, and definitely bikes over cars. Like, obviously, that's all great. But what they don't talk about behind that is actually the push for smart cities. Yeah. In their minds, everything for healing the earth can only come from smart cities. Like when they talk about biodiversity, protection of earth, and that, it's not about that. It's about smart cities. And if you thinking, they just launched a task force. The G20 launched a task force, or they didn't launch it. They just had a meeting, the digital task force, to accelerate 5G. And then at the same time, the C40 just created a task force of mayors to accelerate the smart cities. So this year we have it's all here, right? We've got the fourth industrial revolution accelerating. China just put out their blockchain, huge security issue to the US dollar. We've got the New Deal for Nature coming in October. We've got the digitalization of education already underway. We've got like the 5G accelerating, but like I said, I feel like we could, if we organized in our communities, that we could stop that. We can't depend on anyone else. It's up to us. There's no one that's going to come and save us, no one. So we do it or we don't. We're going to organize together and try to stop that, at least try, or we're not. So yeah. This is it. I mean, we've got not even a year, right, to stop this. If you go right,
well, they're planning to turn the satellites on in like a month or two.
Yeah, they're advancing that as fast as they can at this precise moment. And meanwhile, you can ask most people, go outside, ask 10 people what 5G is. Most people don't even know that word. No. So we've really been blindsided. And so there you go. There's proof. If you have any doubts at all, there's your proof that none of these groups give a fuck, right, about us. Yeah. Where's the resistance to 5G, which doctors and scientists tell us damage biodiversity, damage human health, damage plant life, where's the resistance? None. You know, where's the resistance to the financialization of nature? None. They're on board. They're helping build that. So
yeah. And maybe say a little bit about like, is it net zero? How they get around that one?
Well, net zero is something I haven't really thought about for a while. So net zero was one of the very foundations of XR's platform when they came out. And XR went from like one group within, I think, 6 weeks to hundreds, all organized by Margaret Solomon Klein of the Climate Mobilization Group in the US, who works with the multi-million-dollar climate emergency fund they set up to finance XR. I mean, it's just so much bullshit. It's just so much tied into the ruling classes, all of this. It's right there. People just have to look. It's so blatant. It's so open. Mm-hmm. So that was one of the platforms for XR, which is created by the ruling class and serves the ruling class. And what else was on there? The Green New Deal, right, which I've already touched upon, militarization, digitalization, fourth industrial revolution. The one thing was net zero by 2025. Everyone hopped right on board with that. Oh, net zero 2025. Oh my God, no emissions by 2025. Net zero has nothing to do with no emissions. Nothing. They don't say zero emissions. They don't say no emissions. Net emissions. So that means offsets. What you can offset for that net. Like it's nothing to do with zero. I mean, with both. I'm sure I've written about that, and that's everywhere. That's not hard to find. You can just write in definition for net zero. And right away, you'll find that has nothing to do with zero emissions. So it's all, again, markets, emerging markets, carbon offsets, everything measured, everything monetized, turning data. Basically, data is the new oil. Okay, so data is the new oil. All life, your life, my life, would become human capital, data commodities. Nature will be a portfolio of natural capital, all on the blockchain ledger. Everything's becoming like this is capitalism is next. Okay, so the capitalists basically figured out how to have okay, so for centuries, capitalists, ruling classes stole the labor, right, from the working class. They stole the labor, they all became billionaires, everything's stealing the labor, everyone knows this, of the working classes. But now they found a way to replace the humans, right? So now, basically, they will make money off our data and they will have us conform to the system, like we'll become completely compliant, for instance. And I have to say right now, the work of Alison McDowell to understand the blockchain and the smart contracts and how that will demand compliance to the system, even how New Deal for Nature, how nature will be all put into the blockchain. Alison McDowell is an independent research, a lot like myself. She just got into it. I forget how, I think through teaching. Anyway, she does a superb job of laying all this out. Also, Wrong Kind of Green has a primer on what blockchain is, what AI is, artificial intelligence, blockchain, how we, every time we use data, how it's becoming more and more clever. Anyway, all about that. Basically, data is the new oil, the new commodity, and everything will be commodified, monetized onto the blockchain. So I know where this is going. So the smart contract. So right now, I think Chile has already launched it. Okay, China's launched digital wallets for sure with their blockchain. Chile is doing something with COVID-19 where you'll get a digital passport or health passport. Anyway, what happens, so the blockchain is basically the ledger, the contract is over here. So for instance, do you know what universal basic income is? UBI?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's being framed. That's like a neoliberal thing that's been, they've been devising it for years for this time when they start to automate all the jobs. It's basically an exchange trying to keep the working class, even middle class, from revolting, from resisting. They will give $1,000 a month. It'll be a new universal payment. And they're hoping that that will be enough just to give people barely enough to live, to keep them from resisting the new, how everything's going to be automated. So you have your contract and say you'll have your payment over here, but say when you agreed to get your payment, it came with different conditions that you have to meet over here. So blockchain in the middle, your behavior on one side and your benefits on the other side. Everything to get your benefit has to be fulfilled through the contract and the blockchain by your behavior. So say you go to get your benefit, but within the contract, you were supposed to get the vaccine, the COVID vaccine, and you haven't got it. Well, guess what? No benefit, no, right? So you won't be forced, like in the Orwellian sense, was like maybe the military won't stand and force you, but you'll be forced because you have to feed your children.
Yeah.
You'll be forced because you need health care, right? So it's that kind of compliance.
And then, I mean, I think they've had something like this in China for a while. And, if you don't behave in a way that's acceptable, then, your capacity to buy food or, to get on an aeroplane out of the country.
Yeah. Yeah, and so you can create a fully compliant society without really even exerting physical force, because it's all based on people's needs, and people need to eat, and people need to feed their children, and people need health care. So all you have to do is tie those in. Like within the blockchain, there's no human, there's no human oversight. It's just the blockchain. If you don't fulfill, you don't get. It's that clear cut. That's simple.
Yeah.
So,
and
yeah, I know
we're looking at a cashless society as well. I mean, I'm hoping very much that there is some clever people out there looking at a new currency for those of us who don't want to play this game.
That's the thing. Like you'll get people who say, "Oh, like blockchains, you know, can be made a force for good," right? And then they talk about Bitcoin, which I don't know very much about, but I just know, you know, people that create that stuff that are interested at the beginning hope that'll be a way to have more freedoms and democracies and that. But it gets co-opted, right? Like every time they always can take activism and commodify it. They can commodify anything and reframe it, restructure it for their own desires and own to fit into their own architecture of this cruel dystopian world that they want, that they're building. So yeah, the money already, like I said, in China, they've already launched their blockchain April 25th. You can barely, there's nothing on it here, but if you look it up, you'll find it. So it's already like, there's over 40 banks looking at digitalization of currency. That's already, again, that's another thing going forward, digitalization of currency. But none of it, unfortunately, is to the benefit of the common person, working class person, middle class, is to the benefit of the ruling class, right? To looking after their best interests, not ours. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's a big one coming.
And what about with the conference in October? In October, where they're planning to?
Sure, because right now everything's been canceled. I'm not sure if they'll do it virtually. To be honest, I haven't even had time to dig in the last month or so what's happening with the New Deal for Nature, above and beyond what we already know, because I've been trying to educate myself on more of the fourth industrial revolution, on the 5G, what's going on with that, on the COVID-19, like watching, you know, and reading tons of papers and lectures by medical experts that are censored by mainstream media. So there's a lot right now to try to keep an eye on.
Absolutely.
There's a lot, but it's all, like I said, all the same people, all the same groups, all the same people. That amazes me. Like it's how it's such a small group of people that manage and control so much.
Yeah.
And they literally just create whatever group they want, and then it just exists, and we're all supposed to listen, right? Like it's amazing. Like why can't you and I
getting away with it, isn't it?
Yeah, like why? If we create a group, you and I and whoever, you know, no one's gonna. People would think we're crazy or whatever. They just create whatever they want. Oh, global oceans alliance, and then they make all the decisions about the ocean, right? And then they pick, you know, okay, we need someone from Goldman Sachs. We need someone from the World Bank. We need someone from Greenpeace. We need someone, you know what I mean? They form their board, and there they go. And then we all listen. We all, oh, okay, well that's what's going to happen because they said so. Like it's actually really frustrating.
Absolutely.
Like we're from, I guess, from the time we've been so domesticated, right? And from the time you're a child, you're not taught to think critically. If you come up against your teacher for an idea or anything, you're sent to the office. You know, you're told, no, you don't think for yourself. Listen to authority. And just more and more, I just see like, wow, we're really domesticated. how do we break out of these little walls that we've created around us?
Yeah.
You know, what will it take? What will it take? Look what's happening. What will it take?
Yeah, I don't know what it's going to take. There's a huge movement across the globe. There's so many individuals that are awake to what's happening and are very, very committedly, diligently working away in their own ways. So I do have hope.
That's good.
Yeah.
I'm really actually so happy to even hear you say that, because sometimes when you're working on your own,
yeah,
you just forget people.
Yeah.
That are concerned and are working.
Yeah. You know? It's all being, we're not being shown. It's all being so censored that obviously it's not in the mainstream, but even on social media now, I mean, anything, I hardly post because I know no one's going to see anything I post anyway, because it gets only the people that already know what's going on get to see it, sort of thing.
So true. It's so ghosted. Like everything I share, I try to do like one post a week on Facebook. And I hate Facebook. I actually hate social media, but it's the only way we get hits to the website. Like that's where everyone is. Yeah. It's the master's tools. Eventually, they only work for the master. But I mean, that's what we have right now. So that's what we use. But even on those ones, people try to share the posts, they won't share, right? They share them, people try to read them, content not available at this time. Everything's ghosted, it's, yeah. I mean, soon, I think probably what will happen shortly, most people with dissenting voices or views or any kind of, real journalism will just be deleted and banned from social media platforms. I think that's coming. Even our own government.
Close to that, yeah.
Under the guise of COVID-19, all these fascist measures and legislations are coming in, to basically just clamp down on any opposing voices that go against, government, global institutions. Like the XR, the Greta thing, it's all led to what's just happened. Again, a huge global consolidation of power. Where World Economic Forum now presides over United Nations. It presides over the World Health Organization and all those agencies within those groups, under the UN. You have Bill Gates now. He was number 2. I think he must be number 1 now, funder of the World Health Organization, which is a UN agency. And, I mean, the corporations literally, they own everything now. They've taken control of everything. So even the time people waste in the elections, like especially the United States is crazy about elections and Democrats versus Republicans. Forget it. They serve the same people. Like that's really a waste of time. And if we haven't realized after decades and decades, like look at where we are. We're on the precipice of like a fucking disaster, right? Like ecological collapse. Those things go nowhere. They don't work. Politicians don't have power. Like the Green New Deals, they don't make those. They don't write those. That comes down from the top. You can say all you want to say about the best Green New Deal in the world. The politicians promoting them have no say. The United Nations created the Green New Deal in 2009. And then remember there's that huge bailout. And they said openly at the time it was to monetize nature, that it was to create economic growth because the whole global economy was stagnant and about to collapse back at that time. Then they had the huge bailout, and then that went away for a while, right? And they continued to work on how do we monetize nature? how do we assign price to every blade of grass and plant and every single thing on the planet? And so year after year, they've built on that. They brought in finance, accountants, how to figure out that system. Right now, again, then they relaunch it. Like Avaaz was actually doing polling on the Green New Deal back in 2009. They were polling on that, and that was a thing. And then it went away. They fine-tuned everything, and now here it is again. In September last year, the UN put out a document, Global Green New Deal. It's a huge document. Very quietly, it comes out at the United Nations. Hardly anybody covers it. Oh, what's her name? Alexandra. Everyone calls her AOC Cortez. Anyway, she keeps talking about the Green New Deal, Green New Deal. She was at the C40 City Global Summit last September. They're on stage. They had a media release talking about the Global Green New Deal. Global Green New Deal. But in her Twitter feed, in media, no, she never presents it as global. It's like a Green New Deal for her people that she's working on. These things are all top down. They're already written. Being, that's how they channel our energy. They frame it, basically. We mobilize amongst XR and Greta and whoever they present to us, and we mobilize to demand what they have already designed and ready to lay out for us. Like it's a complete facade. So we're demanding things that they want to give us that further annihilate the planet. Yeah, so basically they are able to have us march for our own annihilation. As simple as that. We're marching and demanding our own destruction.
Yeah.
And then when they give us something, it's like, then it's presented as a victory or a win. It's their win. It's their victory. It's not our victory. This is a world designed for them, not for us. The 350 the XL campaign. Did you ever hear about that pipeline campaign?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So this is interesting. So XR, what's his name? Trevor. So the Climate Emergency Fund set up to fund millions of dollars and like what kind of grassroots gets millions of dollars of funding? So anyway, he sets up the Climate Emergency Fund, right? And it's like Getty's, like lots of money. This is a guy that works with the entertainment industry, with Bill Gates, right? I think he ran one of something for the Bill Gates Foundation. I did a huge thread on Twitter about it. So Trevor, he has an investment company with Warren Buffett's son, right? Like it's all wrapped up into activism. It's just mind-boggling. And so anyway, the Keystone XL pipeline campaign, 2/3 of it's built. We have to stop the pipeline. No one even knows. All you have to do is go to the website of the builder. 2/3 is already built, but they have everyone thinks in their head, oh my God, we have to stop this pipeline. Even though 2/3 of it's built. One pipeline, if you look at pipeline map, there's like literally hundreds of thousands of pipelines covering the whole planet, but we have to stop this one. So anyway, all the money goes into this one campaign. The whole time over like 2011 until like 2000, I forget, let's say 2017. What's his name? Buffett. Oh God, what's his name? What's his first name? Buffett? You know who I mean.
Yeah, I don't know him, but.
Oh, I can't believe I can't remember his name. White hair, everything, Buffett. He was Obama's financial advisor. Like he has enough money, if he pulled it out, he could collapse the US. Like one of the richest men, right? And him and Gates are like family. Anyway, this whole time everyone's focused on this pipeline, he builds a whole rail dynasty up from nothing. So all the oil starts going, instead through the pipeline, it starts going over the rail, right? He builds Gates invests in Canada, one of our main rail stations. He owns like 25% of the shares now. And Buffett, they made billions. They almost doubled their investment within like 8 years. All the oil is now on the rail car. And then, I'm sure you heard of it, then there was that horrible accident in Montreal where the train went off the tracks and blew up the whole city. Lac Megantic. Did you hear of it?
I think I've heard you speak about it.
The people like basically just evaporated, like incinerated, right? The whole downtown gone.
Wow.
And then the NGOs even tried. That was too big for the media to ignore. They tried for like 3 days. There's next to nothing on that in the media. And it was just too huge. It slowly just started getting into the media. And then a couple NGOs sort of acknowledged it. I mean, the oil will get to market. As long as the market needs the oil will find a way to the market. So all that campaign did on the Stop the XL pipeline was to create a huge rail dynasty. And then he gave through his son's foundation, Tides Foundation, is like a big foundation, and they distribute money underneath. So they distribute money to like 350, all the groups on the front lines that you and I would see. Mm-hmm. Tides is above, funneling all the money down. Mm-hmm. And Buffett gave Tides almost $30 million. It's so much money, but not when you're making 20 billion. Like 30 millions, you know, like throwing someone $5, right? And so, yeah, they really get us every single time. We're everywhere where we're looking. It's like right now, everyone, COVID. Meanwhile, over here, this is where it's all happening.
Yeah.
5G, nature. Yeah. Anyway, I know I'm not even telling you anything you don't know.
Yeah, but we've got lots of listeners here, and hopefully you're connecting lots of dots.
So what do you think our chances are on 5G? Nothing?
No, I couldn't bear to think that.
Yeah.
I see amazing people working on it. You know, yourself, the work Lena's done, her research. I think if enough people start to, you know, serve their councils and school boards, and, you know, there's a lot of ignorance around it. People don't understand the science and how harmful this technology is.
Do they see it as conspiracy? Like, has your media tried to frame it as conspiracy theory?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, and that word is like, it's just such a weapon, isn't it? It just undermines.
A weapon created by the CIA.
Yeah, I mean, I had a conversation recently with someone on social media, and because somebody was had suddenly seen the satellites going in the sky and was like, oh my God, she was suddenly waking up to that moment. And I shared the interview that I did with Lena as a kind of like, here's a tool, you know. And someone else commented and said, you know, because I tagged the word vaccines and geoengineering, because the notice of liability that she's written can be used to serve all of it, because she's written it as electronic enslavement. So
I did watch that show.
Yeah. So they're all, but yeah, this is a woman, I don't know her, but she was just so determined that it was right-wing conspiracy, and why had I tagged those words? And, you know, it didn't matter that I said, well, these are things that are happening, you know, they're not conspiracies, they're things that are happening, and this is a document that can be used for those people that don't agree with, you know, forced vaccinations, or, you know, spraying our skies and controlling the weather, and 5G. So it's very tricky for people. It's very, social engineering, isn't it? It's very strong.
I just want to plug, because I don't work on it myself, there's a girl in our campaign that's amazing. She works really hard, Geraldine. Anyway, she looks after the No Deal for Nature Twitter account. And so, yeah, people can follow that and help share the information.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And I've had the experience that that website's really helpful for people that, you know, it's very good. The information there helps people kind of understand and see what's at play. Because I want to encourage the listeners, if they've got any like kind of flags, alarm bells of like, what do you mean 350 or Avaaz? If you go to Corey's website, Wrong Kind of Green,
yeah,
there is so many articles there on all these different subjects, and the research is very thorough, and it helps to understand.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye.